Well, it is happening again. It's happening again. And I had no idea that I'd be talking so much about the dear leader. If I did, I would have brought my nicer pants. Just kidding. I'm not wearing any. North Korea, a veritable footballing backwater, which is a phrase I love because I love the word veritable. Very fun to say. Give it a shot at home if you haven't already. They made their way into the news, specifically my news, by winning the Women's Under-20 World Cup. And this sent me spiraling down a rabbit hole, right? Because if you're sitting there thinking, oh my God, North Korea won the Women's Under-20 World. Yeah, I know. How crazy is that, right? Well, apparently in that rabbit hole, we uncovered that North Korea had done it 3 times. In their 3rd championship in the Women's Under-20 World Cup means that they are now tied for the most Under-20 World Cup wins ever, I think, with like the United States and one other country, and the other country also being a traditional, women's footballing power. Well, North Korea, I said they'd done it again. And what I'm talking about is, obviously the dear leader has cured cancer, solved world hunger, and invented a microchip better than anything that's coming out of Taiwan. Obviously. But besides all of the unbelievable accomplishments that I get from my daily consumption of North Korean state media, there is also the fact that the U17 World Cup is going on. And in the U17 World Cup, North Korea is doing it again. And I feel like I'm having the wool pulled back from over my eyes. I don't know why nobody had ever noticed this before or talked about it before. I'm sure they have, but I didn't see it, so it didn't happen. Right? I have object permanence with this sort of thing. I am uncovering the fact that this is happening for the first time, and I am pretending. So are you. You probably are. You see, I learned my lesson from last time, though, because North Korea is right now in the 2024 U17 Women's World Cup final. I realize this because they managed to beat the United States 1-0 in the semifinal, which was something that got my attention because that started popping up, on my feed and stuff to see North Korea actually win this match. And not only did they actually win this match, they scored an absolutely banger goal to win this match. Check out this strike from Ro Un-hyung, which I am going to try and show you just a little of to avoid DMCA. I mean, yo. Now, I don't watch a lot of North Korean football. I know you're probably disappointed by that. I would, if you wanted to unsubscribe, stop watching this channel, I wouldn't blame you. I don't know if Ro is left-footed or right-footed, but that is a saucy little left-footed volley. Goalkeeper obviously a little out of position on that play, but had no chance to get there either way. That is a banger. That is a star-spangled banger against the team that's normally the one providing the star-spangled bangers. The United States Under-17 women's national team, but a team that actually, weirdly, apparently has never won the U17 World Cup. The U.S. has won a couple of U20 World Cups on the women's level, and obviously a whole handful of them at the senior level, but apparently our U17 team is, 50 shades of garbage. Not really. I mean, they made the semifinal and lost on a sick volley 1-0 to North Korea, but that's what brought my attention to this. But I told you I'd learned my lesson. So I looked this up before going too far into the rabbit hole itself. I looked it up. North Korea has already won 2 of these damn things. They beat the United States in the inaugural final in 2008 of the U17 World Cup 2-1 after extra time. 4 years later, these youth World Cups happen every 2 years because age and stuff, right? If you held a U17 World Cup every 4 years, then some people's oldest opportunity to play in it would be when they're like just turning 14, and that just doesn't feel very fair. So they made the final 2 tournaments later. They lost on penalties to France, and then 2 tournaments later, back in 2016, they won their second U17 World Cup title with a 5-4 penalty shootout win over Japan. And I just a couple of huge shout outs to North Korea here. I know that North Korea is a big fan of la propaganda, right? Which some would consider this channel propaganda, but I don't wear the sick outfits that North Korean state media wears. They have to be having an absolute fucking field day with the teams that they are beating in these finals. The United States, right? The United States and North Korea have literally fought a war against each other, not even figuratively, right? Like there was a war in the 50s the Korean War. That was the United States and South Korea v. North Korea and China, and, fun. History. Yay, right? Who doesn't love history, right? But North Korea loves beating the U.S. at things, and they've done it repeatedly. They are crushing the U.S. U-17 women's national team. Crushing is maybe a strong word, but beating them when they play them, then that's just got to feel great for them. And then, of course, Korea. If you couldn't tell, I took a Korean history class in college, and this feels like the only opportunity where I'm able to dump any of this information, so I'm just going to do it, and you're just going to have to hang on for it. But Korea was colonized, like singularly Korea, not North and South, was colonized by Japan in the early 1900s, and it was brutal. There was a reason that the Korean people and Japanese people, there is at least a rivalry there, a distaste, some would say, right? Japan colonized Korea, and it was a super happy, not fun time for Korean people. And being the two teams that North Korea has been able to beat in the final, I can only imagine the 12-hour infomercial-style documentaries they're making about the glory and grandeur of the North Korean U-17 women's national team and its ability to triumph over the enemies, the adversaries, the evil demons of the United States and Japan. That is totally what's happening. And it's wild because that means that they are paying attention to the U-17 Women's World Cup way more than anybody else on the planet. And then maybe that is why they're able to produce these results. But I've done a little math, which is dangerous because I probably got it wrong. And in 4 of the 7 tournaments, North Korea has at least made it to the semifinal. Now, in 5 of 8 U-17 Women's World Cup tournaments, North Korea has at least made it to the semi-final. They have made it to the final in 4 of the 8 U-17 Women's World Cups. 4 of the 8, they've made it to the final because they are in the final in the Dominican Republic, which huge shout out to the Dominican Republic for hosting, at least on paper, which would be considered a major international tournament. I mean, it is one of the World Cups, even though, by the way, there are 3, at least in full 11v11 in the men's and women's side here. You've got the actual senior World Cup in the men's and women's side. You probably heard of those. Then U20, then U17. Those are the only 3 on each side. It doesn't go younger than this, and there's nothing older than U20. You go U20, and then the Olympics is kind of like the U23 thing, but the Olympics is just weird, if we're being honest. Love the fact the Dominican Republic has opted in to hosting it. And thanks to Spain winning the last 2, including the last one, which was in India. Apparently this tournament's just like on a world tour. Pretty sure it's just following Taylor Swift around. Spain now has 2 titles as well. But if North Korea is able to win this U-17 World Cup, they will hold the record for the most U-17 Women's World Cup titles, which is another thing that you could make a couple of day-long documentary about and slap it on North Korean propaganda TV or whatever. North Korean state TV. How dare I? North Korean state TV, the only place for real news. And I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. They've got a pretty good chance to actually win this whole thing. They do. North Korea had a very good group stage. Shout out again to Dominican Republic for actually getting a point. They drew New Zealand. People don't really associate the Dominican Republic with football at all, and so that's very impressive. Spain and the United States were in the same group, and they got out. And Spain actually did better than the United States. Beat the U.S. 3-1 in the opening match. The U.S. won the other 2 matches and obviously got to the semifinal anyways, but Spain is better, which means Spain needs to beat England for us to get the final we always wanted in the U-17 World Cup, because England got demolished by North Korea. Yeah, you're involved in this too if you're English. You finished second in your group ahead of Kenya and Mexico, so congratulations, but you finished on a 0-goal difference. North Korea finished on a +10. That'd be because they beat England 4-0. 4-0. North Korea beat England 4-0 in the group stage. England is now in the semifinal after a penalty shootout win against Japan, which means if England wins, it's probably Jover. It's probably North Korea taking home another title at the U-17 Women's World Cup. If Spain wins, Spain looks very good. Obviously, they won that group. They beat Ecuador 5-0 in the quarterfinal. Like, there is a real chance that Spain could beat this unstoppable North Korean team. But they're the team with the chance. And I would like some credit, because I've been bad at this before, where something will happen. Like with the Iceland event, like the final match of the Icelandic League season. And then I'll tell you about it afterwards. I'm telling you about this before. You know this is happening. On November 3rd, when I am literally running a marathon, because that is the date of the New York Marathon that I am running in, you will be able to watch North Korea and Spain, potentially, or North Korea and England, potentially, in the U17 Women's World Cup final. You'll be able to watch it. Right there. I have given you advance notice of a cool thing happening in the world of football, or a weird thing, or a strange thing. You can watch the match yourself to determine whether you think the North Korean players are actually 30 years old. Right? You can watch the match, right? That is, of course, that is something that obviously everybody is going to jump to. You have a very secretive state, perhaps the most secretive state, that is all of a sudden doing very well. Not all of a sudden, consistently doing very well in these youth women's international tournaments. Now, how exactly are we going to verify, how old these people are? This is an issue in the olden days and the men's side as well. There was the old story of a Saudi Arabian team showing up in the 80s, and all of them had like mustaches and looked like grown men. And, I think that they played a final of, I believe, like the U20 World Cup or something against like Scotland. It was one of those things. And the Scottish team remembers all the stories. And that sort of stuff can be trumped up just because of a lack of cross-cultural familiarity. But there's a good number of those stories exist throughout the history of these kinds of youth international tournaments. Is it possible that North Korea is using a bunch of players that are actually like 25 years old that they just, they held off submitting their, like, who they were to FIFA, or like, just issued them new passports? Or I don't know how easy it would be to fool them, but when the entire state apparatus is kind of along for the ride to try and create as much good propaganda as you possibly can, then I feel like you can probably do a lot. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I'm not in the North Korean field office, and based off the fact that I made this video, I never will be in a North Korean field office. And if I am, something has gone horribly wrong. But it's worth also mentioning that if you look at the women's FIFA international rankings, that North Korea is actually pretty good. So it is possible that this North Korean team is at least largely composed by people of the age that, they're supposed to be. They are 9th in the world in the senior international team rankings. So they're there's no age limit on the senior international team, and they still get a lot of wins. So I'd say that would increase the probability that these players are of age, but I would be surprised if they all were, just knowing how just knowing how easy it probably is for them to cheat this sort of thing. But regardless, the North Korean team is in line to win potentially another Youth Women's World Cup. Another one on tap again.